Women make up nearly half the workforce here in the United States, yet all too often we still hear, or it's implied, that we are not enough. Today our guest on Excellent Living, CPA and former Fortune 500 Vice President Deborah Smith Pegues says, a woman's uniquely female qualities can actually position her for success. Deborah has written more than 15 books, selling more than 2 million worldwide. She's an astute businesswoman, and it's Deborah's hope that women will begin to recognize that God has gifted them with specific traits that translate to strengths as a leader. She talks with our host Cheryl Martin about principles in her book, Lead Like a Woman.
Deborah, delighted to have you back on Excellent Living. You always offer such keen and practical insights. And one of the reasons is you have such a breadth of experience, not only as a successful author, but also as an executive in corporate America. So I'm really glad that you're going to be sharing with us today just some empowerment strategies for women. And let's just go back a little bit, because you're qualified to write a book like this because you pushed through so many barriers in corporate America. But let's go back to, you share a story that even though you graduated as valedictorian of your high school class, you were told you had 3 strikes against you. What were they?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you, Cheryl, for having me, and it's my delight to be here. Yes, they told me I had 3 strikes. I was a woman, I was Black, and no, I was a woman, I was Black, and I was a dark-skinned Black. So I said 3 strikes, I'm out before I even get started. But I didn't see those as strikes. I saw them as distinctions and that I need to take advantage of and manage.
What led you to see them as distinctions and not as barriers?
Well, because it's a choice. You know, how we view anything is a choice. And I just believe, let me just say this, lest I sound like a walking Bible, and I don't plan to, but everything comes out of a belief system. And I just believe that nobody could thwart God's purpose for my life. So if I had those things that appeared to be disadvantages, they were clearly going to be something that God was going to use. And so that's why I saw them as distinctions. Okay, I can stand out. I can stand out as a woman. I can stand out as a Black person. I can stand out as a dark-skinned Black person. So it's a mindset. That's what that was about.
What motivated you to write the book, Lead Like a Woman?
Well, honestly, Cheryl, I got the title. I think the title just dropped in my heart. And I thought, yeah, I've seen a lot of women try to lead like men. It doesn't work because society is just not ready for that man-woman. So I decided that. And then I read a stat. And it said that there would be 200 years before women would achieve gender equality. I thought 200 years, I don't have that time. We need a tool out there that's faith-based to some extent, because there are other good books with secular themes, but that teach you how to act like a man. But I thought we needed something that would be straight from the Word of God, that would help women to advance their cause. Career women, God has called women to be, in the forefront. And leadership is not a man's only domain. And many of us have bought into that. So I just wanted a tool out there that would help. And it's been very helpful.
I'm glad you brought that up, because to what extent that stereotype that leadership or effective leadership is a man's domain, to what extent have even women bought into that belief system, and has that derailed us somewhat?
Well, absolutely. And, and it's the culture. I'm going to blame the culture. We were culturalized, if that's a word, to be a certain way as women. And you're not supposed to come across as strong and confident. You're supposed to be taken care of. That was old school. Here's what I like. At the beginning of time in the Garden of Eden, when God told Adam and Eve to go and multiply and fill the earth, neither one of them could do that independently. They had to work together. And I believe that was the plan from the start, to have men and women work together. And so we have to understand that. That's why I wanted to make sure people know this isn't a male bashing book. This is about how do we advance our ball down the court at the same time without developing these anti-male attitudes. And so, yeah, we're supposed to work together. Leadership, we were born to lead. That's why in the book I talk about 12 traits, inherent traits that most women have that position them to excel in leadership. And they're not traits you normally associate with leadership and strong leadership, but corporations and studies and all have shown that when you have a woman anywhere in that, at the helm or on a board or somewhere in a position of influence, the bottom line is better and the workers are more engaged.
So let's take a look at some of those inherent traits that you mentioned. And the first one that you started out with is being collaborative.
Yes. And you know that we love to collaborate. I like that word because I see two words in there. It's two parts, co and labor. We like working together. We like teamwork. We even all go to the restroom together. So we that's our tendency. And we know as women that none of us is as smart as all of us. So we tend to be a little bit more inclusive. We don't come to the table with that, hey, I'm the Lone Ranger, I can get it all done by myself. We like to collaborate. That's a natural trait. And when I say these things are natural, I don't mean every woman has them or will demonstrate them, because some of us really are stuck in, hey, I don't want anybody to think I can't handle this. But that's one of the key traits, is learning how to be that teamwork person.
So how would this work on your job? How is this an asset? Let's say you're a woman in a male-dominating field.
Okay. Well, if you're it doesn't matter. You don't have to change who you are because you're in that field. Now, there may be men in that field who are saying, hey, I'm climbing this ladder. And you may be the person that asks input from others. Let me hear your input. Because listen, again, none of us is as smart as all of us. So when a woman is smart enough to say, hey, I could get input over here. I don't care about the gender. I don't care about the race. I don't care about the age. I don't care about any of those things. I believe that everybody brings something to the table. Well, when you do that, think about the synergy you get when you bring several minds together. So that works very well in the workplace. Doesn't matter if you're in a male-dominated profession. And then there are some, like in the Army, you don't go around asking the troops, what y'all think about this strategy? You lead, you still lead, but you try to get that input. You have to know your environment. Some environments you ask for input more than others. But again, that ability to be collaborative is going to take you a long way.
Now, you believe, Deborah, that women leaders should embrace the gift of emotion and not see being emotional as a negative?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You see, I call it being emotionally savvy. Some people call it being emotionally intelligent. Either way, emotions have to do with not only just, not crying, because I'm going to talk about that in a second, but we can be empathetic. We can look at other people and feel what they're feeling, and we move quickly to try to identify with that. That doesn't mean that men aren't empathetic, but they move more quickly toward a solution to whatever the problem is. But it's important that you have that kind of self-awareness. What am I feeling? And then get in touch with that. And we tend to be able to do that a little bit more quickly than men. And I always tell everybody, but if you do happen to get emotional and some people say crying is the kiss of death. But if you do end up crying because you feel so strongly about that, just admit that. When you finish crying, you straighten yourself up and you say, you can tell I feel pretty strongly about that. You can recover from that. But I would suggest that you have more coping mechanisms, like breathing deeply so that the tears don't flow, because some men will see that as the kiss of death. Oh, she's not ready. Doesn't mean you're not ready. It just means you may be passionate about the issue at hand.
So how does a woman keep her emotions out of the driver's seat?
Well, you have to, when you understand what emotion is working and you practice that, you understand the male mindset that it's not personal, it's just business. And usually if we cry, we're feeling a little bit hopeless, like something's not going to happen. Listen, God has determined which way your career is going to go. You got to always keep that in mind. When things aren't going the way you think they should go, I always go back and anchor myself around Psalm 139:16. All the days ordained for me were already written in God's book. Or I'll anchor myself around Isaiah 14:27. The Lord has purposed. Who can thwart him? Name somebody. So I always think about that. Nobody can thwart God's purpose for my life. So whatever this is that's not going right, I'm just going to back up a minute and say, God, what are you saying? What are you doing? Maybe you're trying to grow me in an area. Maybe it's just isn't the time. At any rate, I'm winning. All things are working together for my good, no matter what. I'm always winning. You have to have that as a belief system, because it will impact not only your professional life, but every area of your life.
What are some of the other inherent traits that you consider to be positives for women that you love talking about?
Well, I like talking about the fact that we know how to be vulnerable. We can show that kind of susceptibility to weaknesses, and that really makes us very relatable. We know how to be resilient. We can bounce back. I just think that's one of the things you have to have. But I like that servant-hearted thing we have. And we have to manage that. And let me just back up and say that for every 12 trait that I list in this book, and in fact, I may just rattle them off, but you have to manage them. And that's the key, because they can be taken overboard, and what would be an asset becomes a liability. So we are, let me just name a couple of them. We are communicative. We keep people informed. Some people keep people in the dark. I always say nothing grows well in the dark except mushrooms and misunderstanding. So we are communicative. And that's a good thing. But, Cheryl, we are intuitive as well. We can perceive what's going on and know what it is. We have that sixth sense. And I think that is just such an asset. I mean, think about that. I've been in situations where I just felt like I had been hired as a affirmative action hire. And the Lord himself would just say, I would give a strong impression in my heart, prepare this report. I mean, invariably, they would ask for that report and it would be done so fast or already done. They thought I was smart. I was just listening to the Holy Spirit. But that's from being intuitive.
So it's also,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So being connecting effectively, it's not just the ability to speak, but also if you are a Christ follower, listening to the Lord, but also to your colleagues.
Oh yeah, you have to listen to others, because no man is an island. We've heard that, but I love it. We went to this seminar once, and they put a glass in front of us, and it was like a champagne glass. And they said, name all of the ways that you could use this. We had to do that as an individual, each person at the table. We made a list and we had a few. Then they told us, like, don't consult with the other people just yet. Then they put us together and said, how many different uses of the glass can you come up with everybody participating? It was like exponential. And that's the point. That their synergy with coming together. And so we have to understand that we don't want to be an island, but we want to make sure we get other people's input.
Now, when a person is vulnerable, which is one of your inherent traits, isn't there a danger of sharing at times too much?
Oh, yeah. I say you have to be discreetly vulnerable. You don't want to tell everything, but when I went out for my walk this morning, I was praying about this interview, and I thought, Lord, when you read about people do business with people they know, like, and trust, people have to know you. They don't have to know every aspect of your life, but they need to know enough about you. And so just to sometimes just share maybe some vulnerable things, just a safe struggle, go in there saying, I think I'm kind of going crazy, or I tend to be bipolar, or whatever. You don't say something that people would negatively look at you and say, I'm going to think differently about her because I know that. But you do practice vulnerability. And that doesn't mean that you're not authentic, because, today authenticity is like a key word, and especially in the younger generation. They don't want any fake people. So if you're too guarded, they don't see that as somebody they know. So it's important that you share just enough. As I say, you have to be discreetly vulnerable. Discreetly vulnerable.
And one of yours is also being a values-driven leader. What does that look like, Deborah?
Well, principles. There are certain principles that you're going to embrace to say, this is what I do. This is I don't go beyond my not walking in the principles that I believe in. For instance, like being integral, that I will never, I'm not saying go around saying what you'll never do, but in your heart, as Daniel did, I purpose in my heart that I'm not going to defile myself. Well, I'm not going to backstab anybody to get ahead. I'm not going to sleep with anybody to get ahead. Anything that God wouldn't join me in doing, then I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to be a principled leader. I'm going to have family values that I don't just say these are the family values or these are the values for my department. I'm going to demonstrate that. I'm going to walk in it. That's so important in ministry, but it's important in the corporate sector as well. It's important in your home if that's where you are an influencer. And let me just stop and say this. We're not just talking to professional women today. We're talking about anybody who's influencing anybody in your circle of interaction. John Maxwell says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And so if whatever kind of influencer you are, you need to have a set of principles that you operate by and hold fast to those, because it gives you great
So every woman is a leader?
Absolutely. Every woman is a leader, because again, we're influencing somebody. I was reading about Susanna Wesley the other day and how she influenced her John and Charles Charles, I believe, was the founder. John Wesley was the founder of the Methodist movement, and his brother wrote over 6,000 hymns. But the woman had 19 kids. But you know what? She was a leader, and they say that the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Is that how that goes? But at any rate, I consider her a leader. And so, yes, anybody who's influencing anybody is a leader. So if you're in your church and you're over in an auxiliary or wherever you are a leader. And you may not have delegated authority, but you are a leader.
That was former Fortune 500 VP and best-selling author Deborah Smith Pegues. The topic today on Excellent Living is Deborah's book, Lead Like a Woman. In it, she encourages women to embrace their innate traits that help them excel as leaders and eliminate those that can block their progress. To learn more about Deborah, visit her website, confrontingissues.com. That's confrontingissues.com. Now, back to the conversation with our host, Cheryl Martin.
These are great inherent traits that a lot of women already possess, but you also say in your book, Lead Like a Woman, that there are certain habits that can hold a woman back that are counterproductive tendencies. So let's look at a number of those. Okay. Deborah, in our remaining time, you mentioned 12 of these, and at the top of that list was lacking confidence. Do you find that more apparent with women than men?
Not only do I find it, the studies validated that when they studied leadership competencies, and maybe there are 10 areas, but women actually excel men in these competencies, except in 2 areas, and that's confidence and risk-taking. Let me talk about this confidence thing just for a minute, because we've been told, men and women have been told they don't have enough self-confidence. Well, I say that's a great place to start, because you don't want any self-confidence. Confidence, con means with, fit means trust. Confidence means with trust. I don't want self-confidence, trust in self, because the Bible says if you trust in yourself, you're a fool. So here's the deal. We need to show up with a mindset and begin to develop that, to know this. We are empowered by a God who knows everything. He's all powerful and he's always present. Now, see, we don't struggle with competence. We do struggle with the confidence. And that's because we depend on our education and our experience. If that's what you come to the table with your faith in, you're not going to go very far, because there will come a time where the demand for what you need to know or do is beyond your experience and your education. And you got to know how to step out of that sense realm where you just operate on what makes sense and step into that faith realm. Well, how do you do that? You have some basic truths that you have embraced, that God gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. You see, those kinds of things, that he reveals deep and secret things. So and I show up. I that's what I've been trying to do, show up with that kind of a belief system intact, that even if it's outside of my realm, outside of my comfort zone, God's going to show up. As my old mentor used to say, you're not on the spot, you're just standing in the spot where God's going to speak to you. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Now, Deborah, I'm glad you're bringing this up. And I think the reason why a lot of people rely on education and experience, again, this is what the culture tells women to do. Anyone, let's say in corporate America, go ahead and get that degree, that advanced degree. Make sure you let people know how many years of experience. And if you have these 2 things, you will excel.
Well, that's not always true. That's not always true. And I love to point to that story where Daniel was gifted. I want everybody to read it, men and women, to interpret dreams. He was gifted. He was gifted to do that. He was a principal man, but the king had a dream that he couldn't remember what it was. So here was the demand. Not only tell me what it meant, tell me what I dreamt. And so here's the deal. Daniel says, if you give me some time, I'll come back and tell you. You know, they're killing everybody else who's supposed to know how to do this. Daniel said, give me some time. What does that say? If I can spend some time before God, he will reveal it. He will reveal it. And so don't listen to the culture, because I'm telling you, and most of us may have seen that even during this pandemic, there comes a time it's beyond your ability. And I've been in situations like that where I just had to show up. And it's so exhilarating now to show up and not know all that you need to know, because I just know God's going to show up. I just know it.
Really, you're talking about the value of women in leadership always reverencing the fact that true success comes from God and you need him on your team, and it needs to be just as vital to consult him on any issue you may be having on the job, any challenge.
Cheryl, I have so many stories about that. Let me tell you, one time I was called to the corporate office in a company where I was the affirmative action hire. And they said, we have sent a team to London. We want you to come over and tell us how we're going to record this transaction when we acquire this company, because we know you're a former venture capitalist and you've done lots of this. I hadn't done it at that multi-billion-dollar level. I'd done it at the $100,000 level. And I kept thinking, is this a trick? Are they trying to just, are they trying to get the girl in a fix here? But let me tell you, to make a long story short, I went to that meeting just praying all the way there. God revealed to me what to say, how to say it. And the man that I was interviewing with was so impressed. I'll never forget it. He leaned forward in his seat and he says, where did you learn all of that? Well, I say, being from Texas, I started to say, rat now, rat here. But you know what? And I walked out that door and I said,
it was a download from heaven.
Again. Yeah, I said, don't ever do that again. From heaven. It was straight from heaven, right on the spot, which takes me back to Daniel. He says, Lord, I thank you and praise you that you've given me wisdom and might, and you made known unto me now the thing that I desired. You made known the king's dream. I live in that. I have that seared in my brain, but that's my expectation now, that God is going to reveal what I need to know. So you don't have to be anxious about that. Too much we're limiting God again to what we know. And that's going to cause great anxiety, because when you get plugged in to this omnipotent, omniscient, always present God, you just know let me just explain this real quickly. When I travel, I'm constantly watching the battery level on my cell phone, because I want to make sure I don't run out of juice before I get to the place where the people need to pick me up and blah, blah, blah. But when I get to the hotel room and plug it in, I'm not running over there every few minutes looking at it. How's it going? How's it going? I have an unlimited source of power. So I go on and, I can go in and shower, do whatever I want to do now because I'm connected. And that's what I want to encourage people to do. Stay connected like that. How do you do that? You get into the word, let it get into you. You keep a mindset that says, I am not limited to what I know, who I know, and what my experiences have been.
That's great, Deborah. And I should point out to our listeners, you wrote an entire book on this topic called Supreme Confidence.
Yes. I love talking about
Supreme
that. That's the antidote to self-confidence. Just remember, self is a limited entity. Self can only go so far. And in today's challenges, I need more than self. And so I try hard not to have self-confidence, because I know when it's in myself, I'm going to be limited. I just can't go beyond what all God has called me to do, because my eyes are only focused on the abilities of the self.
Not to mention, Deborah, that self-confidence can steer us in the wrong direction.
Oh, absolutely. Because sometimes we want something so badly, we'll quote, figure it out. And listen, if you're going to really excel, you don't need to figure everything out. You see, we have a wonderful partnership with God. We do the natural. He does the supernatural. So we have this supernatural partnership. I love talking about partnerships as a former venture capitalist, but you just do what you're supposed to do in the natural, and you don't rest your faith there. Yes, you go to school. Yes, you get the degrees. Those things get you in the door. But you know what? Even those things, if God decides he wants you in the door or at the table, he's going to get you there. So you just do your part and stay excited about that. Let God do his part.
Another habit that can hold women back, speaking like a weakling, you say.
Oh, gosh. I can talk all day on that. But listen, we got to learn how to speak up without sounding hostile and bossy and all of those things. And part of that is just even in how how sometimes women introduce themselves and I'm Deborah Pegues and I'm a best-selling author. It's like, listen, even in introducing yourself, there needs to be a certain confidence and finality in it. Listen to this. Hello, I'm Deborah Pegues. Now let the voice fall at the end. That's a statement. And we got to get used to sounding more definite and more confident, because again, when I talked earlier about people like to do business with people they know, like, and trust, trust doesn't just have to do with integrity. It has to do with, they trust your confidence level. They trust your competence. And you do that by how you sound and how you look. And so when I talk about speaking like a weakling, we got to get rid of those qualifiers that we use where we say, right, we'll say something and then we'll say, right, Oh, that just drives me, because I'm saying, don't you know? Don't have us don't ask us to validate what you just said. Say it with finality, because people need to trust you like that.
I think if women are more conscious of it, and I'm glad you brought that up, that will help. Now, I think this one is a big one, expecting instead of asking.
You know, a lot of us think that if we just put our heads down and work really hard, somebody's going to recognize it and reward us. That's not always true. In fact, it's usually not true in the case of a woman. Women just don't ask because they make the assumption that I'm just going to get rewarded because I did it. Men will ask somebody. I think I mentioned a story in the book where the women they complained that the men got more internships than they did. So the guy who was in charge of it, he said, well, the men ask. You know, you got to ask for what you want. And you do that because you know you deserve it. Because most of us, we don't have an issue with competence. We have an issue with just the confidence.
We'll have to stop there for today. You'll hear more from our guest, best-selling author and leadership coach, Deborah Smith Pegues, next time here on Excellent Living with Cheryl Martin. The topic, how a woman's unique female qualities can position her for success, not failure, in any leadership position. Deborah has written 18 transformative books, including Lead Like a Woman. You can learn more about Deborah Pegues and order her books when you visit her website, confrontingissues.com. That's confrontingissues.com. Excellent Living would love for you to follow us on social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook. Just type in Excellent Living. Or on YouTube, you can find our host, Cheryl Martin, offering encouragement as the Good News anchor. And if you want to be the first to know about our events, just join our email list when you visit excellentliving.org. That's excellentliving.org. You'll get an invite to Cheryl's monthly live online teaching session for women, first Wednesdays. I'm Doris McMillan, reminding you to do all of life God's way because it's the best way.